The president of Brazil is vowing to punish the hundreds of people who stormed Congress in Sunday's unprecedented riots in the nation's capital.
Yeah, police have since regained control of the damaged government buildings and made hundreds of arrests. Supporters of former President Jair Bolsonaro stormed Brazil's congressional building, Supreme Court, and presidential palace on Sunday. The breaches came just a week after the inauguration of President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. He defeated Bolsonaro in a runoff election held in October.
Joining us now for more on this from Capitol Hill is CBS News congressional correspondent Scott MacFarlane. Hi there, Scott. So these riots in Brazil happened just a few days after the 2-year anniversary of the Capitol insurrection in the U.S. How does what happened in Brazil compare to the events of January 6th?
Elaine, there's a noticeable symmetry, and not just because of the time of the year, but the breadth and scope of what happened. This was an incident, a tragedy really, in which hundreds, if not thousands of people stormed federal buildings in Brazil. There were hundreds, if not thousands of people storming this building January 6th. What President Lula has said so far is they seem to have effected 400 arrests, and they pledged more arrests and more prosecutions of those involved. That's where the contrast is. On January 6, 2021, here, they were able to effect only a handful of arrests. The rioters so outnumbered police, the decision was made to make arrests at a later date. And that's what we've been seeing over the past 2 years and 3 days. About 950 arrests so far in the U.S. Capitol riot, based on our CBS News review of court records, but also the expectation there are still hundreds more arrests to come, even though 2 years have gone by. That contrast is noticeable, even though there are so many memories evoked by what happened in Brazil.
Yeah. Scott, let's shift gears because the House is slated to vote on a rules package later today. Normally, this is just a routine congressional procedure that typically faces very little resistance, but that's not the case this year. Tell us about what you're hearing from lawmakers and, more broadly, the divisiveness plaguing this new Congress.
High stakes here because this is certainly to be the second face-off between Republicans and themselves. Will this same breakaway faction that caused 15 votes to choose a U.S. House Speaker buck or protest whatever rules package comes out? Or will their rules package of favor make its way through and moderates or some others in more purple districts have a form of protest? We're about to see if this is a second of many fights to come, or if somehow this Republican conference has minimized the internal dissensions after that marathon vote for a speaker. But talking to senior Democrats, they remain expressly concerned about what seems to be a growing consensus of budget cuts coming out of this new Republican majority, potentially including to the military and armed services. We spoke before the weekend with Adam Smith, top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee, who expressed quite a bit of concern about that issue. Take a listen.
Most bipartisan committee in Congress is the Armed Services Committee. I'm happy to work with Republicans, but they have allowed themselves to be taken over by a small group of MAGA extremists who they don't believe in democracy, they don't believe in representative government. The Republican Party first, they got to take back their party, and then we can begin to govern.
Expect to hear about that issue over the next 24 to 36 hours. Do the rules packages that are put in place make it more likely that there could be cuts to U.S. military? Some members of the Republican conference support that. That will be, to put it mildly, a huge wedge issue.
Yeah, I imagine so. A formal ethics complaint has been filed with the Federal Elections Commission against embattled Congressman George Santos. What is being alleged, and how is Santos responding?
So the complaint has been filed with the Federal Election Commission by a nonpartisan group, the Campaign Legal Center. What the Campaign Legal Center is alleging is, in 50-page form, its new complaint, is that there are questions about the disclosures made on campaign finance disclosure forms by George Santos, about his expenses. What did he spend money on? How did he come up with the money to make a massive, nearly $500,000 loan to his own campaign? And also, is there a lack of transparency and disclosure in those forms that raises question about some outside influence being some part of his campaign effort? George Santos is under fire. for making up claims about his past, and then for not being transparent about his business dealings, his professional life, and his campaign. So here we are, the first weekday he serves as a U.S. congressman, and a major D.C. organization has filed a campaign finance complaint against him with the FEC.
All right. Always a busy day there in Washington. Scott MacFarlane, thank you.